My friends, one decision over the next few weeks could quietly shape how prepared the Pittsburgh Steelers are when training camp finally begins. While most of the attention has been focused on the biggest stars on the roster and the players expected to headline the 2026 season, Omar may still have one more important move left before the team reports for camp. And it may not be the blockbuster signing many fans are expecting. Instead, it could be about strengthening the weakest spots on the roster before they become major problems once the season starts. When you look closely at this Steelers roster, there are a few positions where the starting lineup looks solid enough on paper, but the margin for error is extremely thin. One injury, one disappointing performance, or one unexpected setback could suddenly expose a weakness that opponents would immediately attack. That's exactly why the front office may not be finished building this team. The first position that stands out is inside linebacker. This could end up being one of the biggest X factors for the Steelers' defense this season. Not because there isn't talent, but because there are still plenty of unanswered questions surrounding the entire group. Patrick Queen remains an important piece of this defense. He has shown he can be a productive linebacker, especially when playing inside the right defensive system. However, there are still questions about whether he can consistently elevate the defense into an elite unit by himself. Then there's Peyton Wilson, who may have the highest upside in the room. His athletic ability and potential are undeniable, but at the same time, he remains relatively unproven. Steelers fans have every reason to be excited about what he might become, but projection is different from production, and until he consistently performs on the field, there will naturally be uncertainty. Cole Holcomb offers another different profile. He provides experience and stability whenever he's available, but availability has unfortunately become one of the biggest concerns throughout his career. A dependable veteran can only help if he's healthy enough to stay on the field. Malik Harrison brings physicality against the run, and certainly has value in specific situations, but his limitations in pass coverage remain difficult to ignore. Modern NFL defenses constantly ask linebackers to defend athletic tight ends and running backs in space, making coverage ability more valuable than ever. When you put all those pieces together, you start seeing why adding another veteran linebacker could make perfect sense. Not necessarily someone expected to become an immediate starter, but someone capable of providing reliable depth and insurance throughout a long season. Several experienced linebackers are still available, including Bobby Okereke, Josie Jewell, Jermaine Pratt, and Denzel Perryman, who previously worked with defensive coordinator Patrick Graham in Las Vegas. Each of those names brings NFL experience, and each could potentially help stabilize the position. But one player seems to make more sense than anyone else: Elandon Roberts. It's a name Steelers fans know very well. Many supporters were disappointed when Pittsburgh didn't keep Roberts previously, and it's easy to understand why. His physical style perfectly matched the Steelers' defensive identity. He plays downhill, attacks blockers aggressively, thrives against the run, and already understands the culture inside the organization. If the Steelers are looking for a veteran who could immediately walk into the locker room without needing weeks to adjust, Roberts checks nearly every box. There's another important factor that shouldn't be overlooked: chemistry. Roberts already has relationships with several players inside that linebacker room. He understands the expectations, the defensive mentality, and the physical brand of football Pittsburgh wants to play. That familiarity could make his transition almost seamless compared to signing someone completely unfamiliar with the organization. Even from a roster building perspective, adding Roberts could create additional flexibility. If Pittsburgh believes he's an upgrade as a run defender, it could potentially allow the team to move on from Malik Harrison while creating additional salary cap space in the process. It's not necessarily the type of transaction that dominates national headlines. It's the kind of move that championship contenders quietly make because they understand that depth wins football games just as much as star power does. But linebacker may not even be the position causing the greatest concern. The safety room presents an even more delicate situation. The projected starting duo of Deshaun Elliott and Jaquan Brisker looks solid entering training camp. There's little reason to question either player as a starter. The concern begins immediately behind them. Right now, the Steelers don't appear to have a proven backup safety capable of stepping into meaningful regular season action without creating major concerns. Some fans may immediately point toward Jalen Ramsey as a possible solution if injuries occur. While Ramsey certainly has experience lining up at safety, his greatest value comes much closer to the line of scrimmage. Playing him near the box allows him to impact the running game, attack quarterbacks as a blitzer, and maximize his physical skill set. Asking him to spend extended time playing deep safety would take away many of the qualities that make him such an effective defensive weapon. That creates an obvious question for Pittsburgh. If either Elliott or Brisker misses time during the season, who becomes the next man up? Do the Steelers trust the current depth enough to survive that situation? Or does Omar Khan still have another veteran signing waiting before training camp officially opens? What do you think, Steelers Nation? Should Omar Khan prioritize adding experienced defensive depth before camp begins? Or do you believe the current roster is already strong enough to compete without another veteran signing? The answer to that question may ultimately determine whether the Steelers enter Week 1 with confidence or with unnecessary risk. History has shown that NFL seasons rarely go according to plan. Injuries happen, depth gets tested, and the teams that survive those difficult stretches are usually the ones that prepared for them months earlier instead of reacting after the damage had already been done. Safety is one area where Pittsburgh simply cannot afford to be caught off guard. While there are younger names on the roster, none have fully established themselves as dependable NFL contributors. Darius Savage has experience, but there are legitimate concerns surrounding his durability and consistency. Staying healthy has been an issue, and when he has been on the field, his level of play has not inspired much confidence. The Steelers simply cannot assume that everything will suddenly change once the regular season begins. Sebastian Castro is another intriguing player. The second-year undrafted defensive back out of Iowa showed enough promise for Pittsburgh to bring him back after Tampa Bay briefly claimed him following the preseason. Coaches appreciate his football intelligence and understanding of the game, but there are still questions about whether his physical limitations will allow him to handle a larger defensive role against NFL offenses. Perhaps Castro takes a significant step forward during training camp and earns that backup safety job outright. If that happens, Pittsburgh may feel comfortable standing pat, but if he doesn't clearly separate himself, Omar Khan could find himself looking toward the veteran market one final time before the regular season begins. Fortunately, there are still experienced options available. Donovan Wilson stands out as one of the most logical candidates. Having spent several seasons under Mike McCarthy in Dallas, Wilson has accumulated valuable starting experience and understands what it takes to contribute in meaningful NFL games. While he may no longer project as a full-time starter, that actually makes him an even more realistic fit for Pittsburgh. A veteran who accepts a backup role while remaining capable of stepping into the lineup if injuries occur can become an incredibly valuable piece over a 17-game season. Wilson also brings familiarity with coaches he has worked alongside in previous years, giving him an easier transition into another NFL defensive system. Instead of asking an inexperienced player to suddenly handle meaningful snaps, the Steelers would have someone who has already proven he can play quality football at this level. Of course, defense isn't the only side of the ball where Pittsburgh still has unanswered questions. Right guard remains one of the biggest competitions heading into training camp. Spencer Anderson has flashed encouraging moments, but his limited starting experience has produced mixed results. Some performances have suggested potential, while others have exposed the inconsistency that often comes with young offensive linemen still developing. Brock Hoffman enters camp with experience as a dependable backup, but he has yet to establish himself as a full-time NFL starter. Jennings Dunker, meanwhile, faces perhaps the biggest adjustment of all, transitioning from tackle to guard while simultaneously adapting to the speed and strength of NFL defensive linemen is far from an easy task. Expecting him to immediately secure a starting role would place enormous pressure on a rookie still learning a new position. That's why veteran help could still make sense. James Daniels remains one of the more intriguing names available. Steelers fans know exactly what Daniels is capable of when healthy. During his time in Pittsburgh, he consistently demonstrated that he could be a reliable starting guard capable of helping stabilize the offensive line. Unfortunately, consecutive major injuries dramatically changed his situation. After suffering an Achilles injury and later tearing his pectoral muscle, durability has understandably become the biggest question surrounding his future. But if the medical evaluations indicate he's he's capable of returning to form, Daniels could represent tremendous value. Perhaps just as importantly, he already has experience playing alongside center Zach Frazier. Offensive line chemistry is one of the most overlooked aspects of football. Familiarity between linemen often leads to better communication, cleaner protection adjustments, and more consistency throughout the season. Bringing back someone who already understands the offensive line environment could reduce the learning curve considerably. Still, even if Pittsburgh strengthens both the defense and the offensive line before camp, there remains one position that could generate the biggest conversation throughout the preseason: wide receiver. Internally, the Steelers appear ready to give Jeremy Bernard and Roman Wilson every opportunity to earn significant roles behind DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman Jr. The coaching staff would likely prefer that their younger receivers develop into dependable contributors rather than bringing in another veteran. Jeremy Bernard enters his rookie season with considerable expectations, while Roman Wilson has another opportunity to prove he can become a consistent option within the offense. However, there is one factor that cannot be ignored. Aaron Rodgers has built his career around trust. Throughout his NFL career, Rodgers has consistently shown a preference for experienced receivers who understand route adjustments, timing, and the finer details of the passing game. Young receivers often need time to earn that trust, and if Pittsburgh reaches the end of training camp believing Bernard or Wilson still aren't quite ready for expanded responsibilities, the front office may revisit the veteran market one final time. Several recognizable names remain available, including Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, Deebo Samuel, DeAndre Hopkins, Noah Brown, Brandon Cooks, Allen Lazard, Curtis Samuel, and even Adam Thielen, although Thielen is currently retired. Among those possibilities, Tyreek Hill presents one of the most fascinating scenarios. If healthy enough to pass a physical and willing to accept a team-friendly prove-it contract, his